Welcome to the Find My Catalyst podcast. We all have problems we're looking to solve, and we know that there are solutions out there, but we struggle with this. How do we find that solution? Where does the nudge come to help us take the next step and start solving tough problems? The intention of this podcast is to help you find your catalyst and take that next step. My name is Mike Simmons. I am the founder of Catalyst Sale, and today my catalyst is Samantha McKenna. This is one of those special episodes where we tested videos. So if you've already watched the YouTube version, you'll notice that this version is a bit cleaner because my levels will match Sam's and the audio will be super clear based on the work that Jody and his team does. Sam is the founder of Sam Sales. She is a LinkedIn expert, early stage advisor, and sales trainer. Sam is absolutely awesome. I hope you enjoy this conversation as much as I did. We cover so much range, from the combination of discussing personal branding to the importance of Sam's trademark, which is show me, you know me, how that impacts outreach. Again, I hope you enjoy the conversation as much as I did. This episode, like all episodes, is brought to you by the Catalyst G.A.M.E Plan. It's our approach to goal setting and execution. Head to catalystsale.com/game for more information. Let's get to the discussion. Sam, it is awesome to see you. I can tell you, I have cognitive dissonance. And the cognitive dissonance that I have is every time I go in to comment on a post that you make and include your name, it says Samantha, and then I've removed McKenna away from it, and then it doesn't go to Sam. So I feel like I'm calling you Samantha and Sam. And I know that when people say Michael to me, I duck because I think a wooden spoon is coming after me, which my mom hates that I share that, but it's the reality of growing up.
I wonder if it would shock everybody if I just if I changed my name, right? Because look, even on the recording, even on Zoom, it says Samantha. And so people wonder, what can I call you? And I know there are some people who are super sensitive about that. It's Jennifer, not Jen. It's Kimberly, not Kim. But it's weird. I went the reverse. I was Samantha my whole life. And then in college, I was like, I'm going to be cool Sam instead, and then dropped it, which I think is the reverse. Everybody goes from their cool name to their professional staunchy name. And I went the opposite direction, but I feel like it fits. So yeah, I think maybe I need to update it on LinkedIn.
And now I'm wondering if I need to grow my hair out so that I could wave it back when I make a change and think. That's absolutely awesome.
Right? So, you got to have the hair toss.
For me, it's just kind of like the dog ear. I call it dog ear, but it's really a head. Because whenever I do something stupid around the dog just kind of looks at me like, what is going on?
I love that head nod to the side. I'm very confused. What are you
very
doing?
Confused. So if people get this when they get an email from someone or a LinkedIn request from someone that says, hey, we've got a number of mutual connections, so I thought I'd connect. And then right afterwards, they go ahead and start selling. So as we just dive right into it,
yeah.
Why does that exist? Why do we put ourselves and prospects in, or others on the other side, into this mode of kind of the dog head look of what just happened here?
We should
and
start
why?
to do this in unison. I think so. They call this the pitch with a P, with the pitch slap, right? I say it sometimes, and clients are like, "Well, that's offensive," and I'm like, "It's with a P," and they're like, "Oh, not a B. Got it. It's the pitch slap." I think so. There's a little bit of everything. I think one, people just don't know any better. And so they send a connection request. They don't think context is needed, or they say the garbage, wait, mutual connections. So I love to work with, aspiring consultants in this space, whatever. And you're like, give me a break. And some just don't know any better. Others are flat out lazy. Others hire agencies that convince them that this is the right thing to do. And this is the easiest path to lead development ever. And so, you know what? It's funny. I've started to save little quick parts, if you will. And when I see these emails come through, I just copy and paste a very polite thing. And I'm like, this is not the way to do it. I suspect you've hired an agency. You're going to do nothing but look bad, especially for financial advisors. I don't know if you get this, Mike, all the time, but it's like, Sam, I would love to manage your portfolio. When is a good time to chat? I'm like, who the hell are you? Right? I'm not going to give you my time to manage the $6 I have in stock. If I don't know anything about you, if you've proven no value to me, probably if you're not a referred person to me. So let's think about a more meaningful way to reach out versus, hello, mutual connections, now buy my product.
We think for whatever, there's this whole idea of, if I keep getting enough of these things, maybe that is something that works and I can just play the volume game. And then I feel good because I've spent money trying to solve a problem. Even if it doesn't work, I at least have spent the money, demonstrate I've taken action. And now I've got some data that tells me it doesn't work. But as you said, there's a better way. What's the better way?
I feel like, well, let's even talk about that really quick, because I think a lot of leaders are in that same boat, that they're just kind of like, let me just do the activity, whether or not it's going to work. To me, these are the leaders who are like, cold call, cold call, cold call. Let's still smile and dial, pound the phones, 100 calls a day. Those are the leaders who are like, I don't know what else to do, so I'm just going to do what I did in 1989 and then just be like, well, it's not us. We're doing the work, right? And leaving it there. I think the other thing to think about is when we do this outreach, so the more meaningful way to do it, right, is to think about what we talk about all day long. Show me, you know me. Who is this person? How can we do quality outreach? How can we make, a difference in showing them value, connecting them with someone, complimenting something that they wrote, a podcast that they were on? Quick segue. Saying, Sam, I love your podcasts. I love to connect doesn't work. Which podcast? Which one? What did I say in it? What resonated with you? I'm going to fall off the page here soon. But that's the stuff that really matters and makes the connection worthwhile. I will say one more thing. I posted about this passionately over the weekend about the way that I sell and the advice that I give is not the right way. It is my way. And we get a lot of feedback, from reps who are like, hey, I saw that you said every time I connect with someone on LinkedIn, I have to have context. And I don't do that. I play a volume game, and I'll send 20 requests and 18 people respond. And so why am I going to go to the effort? And I'm like, well, I think all of that matters is, what do you want to be known for? Do you want to be known for high quality, meaningful interactions? Or do you want to be known for volume, send a bunch of emails, hope for the best? And, hope that one or two people eventually responds versus maybe 50 or 60% of the people respond and they think something good about you.
Even just asking the questions, it makes me think that a lot of people don't even think about what they want to be known for. They just start doing.
Yeah. Right. The brand. No, people rarely think about their brand. And I think even as you're, entry level in whatever it is you're doing, whether you are an accountant, a lawyer, a salesperson, an SDR, whatever it is, like, what are your principles? What do you want to be known for? What do you want to be said about you when you're not in the room? And if someone's like, oh, Sam is the most aggressive salesperson, there's no value in her outreach, and if she emails me one more time, I'm going to jump off a ledge. I'm sure someone has said that about me in my past, but one or two people out of thousands and thousands and thousands, right? And I don't want my brand to be associated with garbage aggressiveness. I want it to be associated with pleasant value. Does that sound so hokey?
It doesn't sound hokey. What is fascinating to me is that people don't think about what they want things to be associated with, or think about what the long-term implications or even short-term implications are of doing certain work. So they go out there and they see something that worked, and then they say, wow, how can I build this at scale? And you brought up the point earlier, which is, hey, I heard you on the podcast. It was great. Well, okay, give me a little bit more context. Like, what podcast? Because today it seems like somebody is training somebody out there that the best LinkedIn request or connection request are those, I saw your post on LinkedIn. It was awesome. Let's have a conversation to talk about all of the services I could deliver to you. And I'm like, what? Wait.
So I think you bring up so many good points. Let's even backtrack to the brand piece. What do you want to be known for? Even bundled up in this post from this weekend about my way, not the right way.
Yep.
Think about sales as a long game, right? Whether you are a seller or a business owner or an SVP at a monster organization and you eventually want to do something, your brand really matters for the long game. Just a couple of days ago, we signed our first six-figure deal of the year at Sam Sales. And the way that the deal came in was somebody, chief operating officer named Tom, who I had rejected for a role, 10 years ago as an account executive. And, even though I was declining the job, I still sent a handwritten thank you note afterwards, expressed my gratitude for even being considered, and then kept in touch through the content that I have on LinkedIn. So playing the long game, right, like came back to bite me in a wonderful way. I think on the flip side, the people who are teaching this, like, this is the right way to reach out on LinkedIn. When we know it's not the right way, you have executive after executive after executive who is screaming from the rooftops on LinkedIn saying, do not do this. It doesn't work. So it's like, why even play the volume game? If you play the volume game, what kind of, leads are we going to end up getting in return? Are you really going to get the people that make the decisions, that have the time, that, have budget to respond? Or are you just going to get a bunch of responses and meetings with, people who don't have that, and you're going to have to work your way up the chain of decision making to actually get in front of them?
Sam, I have activity numbers I need to hit. Like I need to be able to hit these dial numbers and all of the number of discovery call meetings, because those are going to turn into conversion rates for me that are going to help all over this place. Sam, you're getting in the way of me hitting my activity metrics.
So leaders out there, we have to trust the process, right? And we've got to trust the metrics, from the starting metrics to the carry through metrics. So all lovely to see the activity of smile and dials and initial meetings booked. Then what happens? What is the next process? What's the data that we're looking at for that second thing? And I find that a lot of sales reps, will kind of bide their time at an organization, especially if they have a leader that doesn't really look out for that stuff, doesn't look out for the next, but they're just like, look, I've made 100 calls. I had 3 discovery calls. Nobody wants our product, right? They can kind of tread water for 6, 7, 13 months until they finally are asked to exit the organization. Yep. But it's really important that we look at that second metric. How many of those meetings are converted? How many of those dials are converting to discovery calls? How many discovery calls are converting to second ones? Pipeline. What's the activity in each one? How is it moving through the sales funnel? I know a lot of managers who don't know how to do that at all. Final thing I'll just say on messaging, read your message that you write to someone. So Mike, if I reach out to you and I say, hey, I love your podcast. We know a bunch of people in common, wanted to connect with you. If I can copy and paste that to Amy Volas and 1,700 other people who will direct me right away, right? Because as we know, Amy is passionate about this topic of please be meaningful with your outreach. Right. But if I can copy and paste that, then I've missed the mark, right? Be specific. Show me you know me.
It is so powerful. And it doesn't really take that much more effort. And it pays dividends because now people like, oh, wow, you actually do know me. You paid attention to me. And the engagement increases significantly. And I think that's a really, really powerful message for folks. So let's talk a bit about something that you're doing. And I don't know how long you've been doing this, as I've just started noticing it. And I've kind of come back into LinkedIn. I was on a milk carton last year when it came to social, but you have been running these writing workshops. When did you start doing the writing workshops?
It was in a fit of exasperation in January of 2022.
Awesome. That's pretty exciting. So, okay, I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore. So go. So you create these writing workshops after a fit in January. Do you mind reflecting on what was the fit that triggered it?
I think it was like the 19th email that I'd gotten that day that was just garbage subject line. Hope this finds you well, Mike. We can help you build more pipeline, close it for 36% more and 19% faster, whatever. And I'm like, what in the do you do? Like, I have no idea what you do, right? And this is even what we talk about in the writing workshops. And what we just said, if you can pick this up, whatever your value proposition is, and drop it in your 17 other competitors, right? The emails, then you're missing the mark again. What do you do? Are you an outsourced BDR agency? Are you a CRM? Are you an EA? Like executive assistant? What do you do? I have no idea. And I think I got this and I was just like, oh my God, to hell with it. And so it was on a Tuesday. We advertised it that day. And then on Friday, we held the workshop. We had over 200 signups, I think. 110 people showed up, 499 signups for our second one. People need this because they don't know what to write. And it's amazing because we're not talking about like English 401 here. We're talking about the very, very basics. What is my subject line? What's my first sentence? How do I prove value proposition? And even just thinking about things like, again, we'll bring Amy back into the picture. Let's say I was talking to Amy and she said, you should meet Mike. Oh my gosh, he could use your services. Let me tell you how many people don't think to put Amy Volas in the subject line. Amy thought we should talk. Amy Volas referred me. They're just like, hello, Mike. And then they might bury the lead somewhere. P.S. Amy said, oh, you probably didn't even open up the email. And now I go back to Amy and I'm like, well, he's a jerk because he didn't even respond. And she's like, it's the simplest stuff. And I don't know why we're not teaching this, but I'm here to do it for anyone who will listen.
So what about, right, really powerful stuff. What about Medium? How do you think about Medium, whether it's email or direct message in LinkedIn or direct message on Twitter or text message or all the different Slack channels that are out there? How does Medium impact your thinking around communication?
Remember when cold FaceTiming was a thing for 6 minutes? Did you hear about that?
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Oh my gosh, people would cold FaceTime their prospects. And so you would get a FaceTime call from an unknown. Can you imagine? And then I'm like, Mike, how's it going? On the phone, I would be furious. So number one, Medium's not to use, cold FaceTiming. I probably wouldn't FaceTime like my nearest and dearest prospects even. So let's just,
I get embarrassed when I'm talking to somebody and I inadvertently push the wrong button on the phone and all of a sudden it turns into a FaceTime call. I just hang up and I call them back.
Or you're on the phone with someone and they're like, wait, what's happening? You're trying to FaceTime me. And I'm like, oh, dear God, right? Because you probably look like hell. It's like a random Saturday morning. Anyhow, so medium, here are the mediums I use. I always start with email. If there's a good opportunity to build rapport, then I'll do a connection request before I ever start email. But if we're talking about a true warm-ish prospect, if I'm landing and expanding or if I'm doing something like that, I'm going email first. We are an outreach.io shop through and through. It is the best in class, best in breed, always improving. If you guys do not use it, please get on board. But we use that to do our outreach first. We'll always show me, you know me. And then somewhere around email 3, email 4 is when we'll build in a social touch. And here's the thing that I think is really neat about the social touch, right? I can reach out to you and I would say something like, my name might look familiar to you as I've sent you a few emails. Would love the chance to chat with you about what Sam Sales Consulting can do and how we can help you with enablement, what social selling, whatever it is. Yep. If you're ever up for a chat, please let me know. Now, a lot of people are like, it's not going to get you a meeting. Like you're not making a direct ask. You're just like flippantly saying if you're up for a chat. That's my way. Like, I don't want to be the overly aggressive. Do you have time Tuesday at 2:00 or whatever? I don't want to be that person. So I'm going to say that. And then just the kicker with that is, so let's say you accept that connection request, right? And you don't say anything or you say, thanks. And then every rep is like, what do I do now? What you do now is respond and just say, no problem. Thanks again for connecting. Really looking forward to staying in touch. The great part about that is that you, Mike, would accept my connection request. You would say thanks. And then you would see my message pop up in LinkedIn and you would groan. Because what you're expecting is for me to go in for the hard sell, to try and get you to take a meeting. And when you see, thanks for connecting, looking forward to staying in touch, you're going to be like, well, that was weird. And I'll be like, just you wait. The pitch is coming, just not yet. And then engage, be of value, post content, find a way to connect them with something. Worst case, if you post content on LinkedIn, you got a new subscriber to your content, somebody else that will now hopefully see what you post, right? Be smart about that. So those are the two mediums I use. I never cold call. I never will. I know that that's a strong stance. Like it's, and a lot of people disagree with it. It's a manners thing to me. If I'm calling you out of the blue, completely unannounced in the middle of your day to convince you to buy my stuff that will benefit me. Yes, I'm driving benefit to you, but frankly, they'll benefit me. To me, it is the most selfish thing on the planet. It's just not my jam.
And as you're going through this, it goes right back to this whole piece about just because I say that this is what I do, it doesn't necessarily mean it's what you should do.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
If you're out there just kind of chasing around what everybody else is doing and not collecting data or thinking through how it applies or what the impact is, then you're not really being true to yourself. And if you're not true to yourself, how can you create a direct engagement with somebody on the other end if you actually know who their self is? So you show someone that you know them and the thing that you're delivering is not really you. How are they going to get to know you? So how can we think better about this whole process of being authentic to self when we engage with others?
I think that is exactly right. Even if I rehearse a ton and I use, the script that we say you can use if you have to cold call, it still wouldn't feel right to me. And I would feel like we've gotten off on the wrong foot. And that's just in my head and my personal thing. So your style has to be authentic to you. You might be someone who doesn't care about the long game. You might be someone who sells SMB transactional deals and volume really is the name of the game. And you're going to cold call your buns off and that's okay. But whatever your style is, right, it has to be true to you. And it's like I always say, take what you like from what we do and then leave the rest, right? It doesn't have to be a perfect match. I think from an authenticity perspective, right, also think about the medium of your outreach, how you go about it, how aggressively you go about it, because you want to make sure, again, that you're following something that will be part of your brand forever. People will remember this. I still talk to clients from 15 years ago. Somebody just commented on my post today, the very first CMO I ever met with. So think about that for the long term, for sure.
It was thinking about the long-term piece and things that pop up. One of the guys whose kid I coached in flag football when their kids were really little, like when our kids were little. So we're talking now probably about 4 to 12 range. It might be maybe 11. My memory is just going completely gone. But anyhow, he was looking at my LinkedIn profile the other day, and I haven't heard from him or talked to him in years. And if you know who you are, send me a note. I saw you, and I'm not going to name your name. So it's pretty powerful, though, when you can look at a platform and see these are people who are paying attention. They're engaging. I had someone who drove me absolutely nuts. She was one of those people. I say was. She is one of those people who I would work for at some point in time, if ever given the opportunity. And we would talk about that. Well, she noticed some of the video stuff that I was putting out and said, "Hey, this is great. It's great to see you back on LinkedIn." When I came off of the milk carton, she said, "I'm not sharing it because I don't want everybody to know our secrets." I'm like, "Oh no, I thought we had made so much progress." But anyhow, it's just, everybody's watching. Your signal is coming through the noise. Make sure you're delivering your best self as you go through. And the only way to deliver your best self is to be true to yourself. Go.
Completely. Yeah. And I think on the note of eliminating the cold call, like I think there are, again, it's not for me, but there are tons of places where we can use warm triggers, right? So if I send you an email and you open it every time, or if I send you an email and I see that you're forwarding it, that it's being open, in Oregon, in San Francisco, wherever, unless you guys are making fun of how terrible my email is, I suspect that there's some kind of value there or some kind of interest that I can use for a call. But I think I always point it back to all of the records that I've broken over the course of my career. I've been in enterprise sales for 15. I've broken 13 sales records, and I've run SAM sales for 2.5. So just kind of think of it like I've broken a record basically every year of my career, and all without cold calls. So I think we think about that medium. We think about, even if it's not authentic to us, because we feel like it's just, we don't know what else to do. But I think with smart outreach, with meaningful show me, you know me, with social selling, with asking for referrals, with landing and expanding, capitalizing on your relationships, tracking job changes, you can make it happen. I'm proof of that. And I'm proof of that with the teams that I've built that have also broken records that never cold called. Yeah, I'm really passionate about the cold call. I'm going to get a lot of hate now.
There are people who are, one, rolling over in their graves completely, and are like throwing stuff at the surprise. This is actually going to be the first time that we're doing a video version of the podcast. So they're throwing things at the camera as they see
tomatoes, talking
about tomatoes, everything, watermelon, like smashing watermelon. Like, who's that guy who would do that with the big, there's a comedian.
Carrot Top? No. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Starts with a G, I think. Somebody will tell us in the comments, but so they're mad because that's the way that they do it. And you know what? My personal opinion on this is that the reason why they continue to push the cold call is because now they're making their problem their customer's problem. And there's a sense of urgency that they have on their side of the business where they have to deliver things in the short term. So that becomes the next best thing to knocking on their door and saying, "Hey, would you like to come here for some sales consulting or whatever? I'm just going around to see how many people are interested in learning how to have better discovery meetings."
That's what we do. We go door to door in our neighborhood. No, I'm with you. And again, I think it has to be authentic to your style. It has to be authentic to your industry. There are industries, B2C, volume games, where cold calls can hook the right person. And sometimes it can hook the right executive. But I think if you think about it differently, you think of it in a modern way, and you listen to the feedback that executives are saying, you'll see that there's a better way to do it. We're just on with a CEO, venture capitalist, who just sold his company and said, "I do not take calls. You have to find another way to reach me. If you cold call me and I happen to answer, I'm hanging up right now." And I'm like, please, for the love of God, post that on LinkedIn.
It is the one thing that I like. Again, when we talked about iPhones, one of the things I do like is that now we're starting to see text being transcribed. So I can read a text that comes across as a voice or read a voicemail, and then I know what to respond to. But what's fascinating is the number of times that people will call my phone and not leave a message. Now, I am also one of those people. I never listen to my messages. I just don't. It's a waste of time. However, I have found some value in being able to go back through texts that come across. So if you're going to make the call, at least say something that's valuable when you leave a message, because someone on the other end might actually get something and be able to do something with it. So you're shaking your head.
No, I agree. Like, Lee, if you are making the call, leave the voicemail, right? And then there's a lot of theories about if I call tomorrow or the next day, do I then leave a voicemail? When do I leave the next voicemail? What do I do?
Sure.
Talk to the person that like listens to a cold call voicemail and is like, this sounds good, and calls back. And I'm sure there are people screaming, like, it happens every day, happens to me every day. I mean, I don't know. And I honestly can't tell you how many people do that because I've never made a cold call. But unless I have a bleeding problem, unless like my house is on fire and you cold call me and you're like, I've got the water for you, whatever. I cannot see myself calling back unless you have just serendipitously hit me at the exact right time with the exact right problem. And that seems to be a pretty damn long shot of happening. That's why I think emails and social selling are great. Like, it is our way to continue to nurture you. You are the 90 to 95% of people who are not ready to buy us yet. It is my job to stay top of mind with meaningful thought leadership. So at some point you're like, hey, we're ready. And I'm like, cool. Just like my COO from 10 years ago, I'm ready. Imagine if I cold called that guy for 10 years.
Well, this is the cool part about the power and what you did from a workshop related to writing. Yes. In order to write effectively, we have to think and reflect. And there's so many different things that we can do with it. So we take the time, we think, we start putting our thoughts. This is what they say, pen to paper. That's the transition of stuff that's in here. And I can do that now because we're on video. It's stuff that's in your head and translates from your hand onto a piece of paper. So let's talk about how people can get better at writing, like just some simple foundational things that people should be thinking about, whether it's common mistakes or best practices, or whichever direction you want to go.
Oh gosh. So I think most common mistake I see first and foremost is that subject line, right? Like, you've got to think about it as with everything in sales, put yourself in the buyer's shoes, put yourself in your own shoes when somebody sends you an email. And we're looking at two things. So we notice the name, right? But if it's like Barry Johnson, I'm like, I don't know who that is. So I'm moving on and I'm looking at subject line and first sentence. That's what I see in my preview text, right? So if the subject line, if I'm like, Mike, most dynamic social selling training around, and then I say, that's my subject line. And then I say, Mike, hope this finds you and your family doing well in COVID or in the endemic or whatever I want to say. You're going to see that and be like, sales email. You're going to immediately swipe left and delete me. I could have been saying like, hey, you've won $1 million. We want to figure out how to get it to you, maybe in like less of a scammy way. But you wouldn't even know because I missed the mark with my first subject line and then my first sentence. So think about subject line, show me you know me. It does not need to make sense to anybody but the buyer. So you can pull a quote from their recent earnings report, something their CEO said, something they said on a podcast. Think about pulling something from this podcast that we're doing or this video cast that we're doing and using that as a quote in the subject line. Show that person that you've done your homework. People never do this for me. No one ever reaches out with show me you know me. It's always salesy crap. But if you said something like LinkedIn plus Nickelodeon plus Barefoot Contessa, that's all in my LinkedIn profile. I'm literally giving you the keys to the kingdom of how to get in front of me, and no one does it. But that subject line makes no sense to you, Mike. It makes no sense to anyone listening. Makes total sense to me. Love Barefoot Contessa, worked at LinkedIn. I was on a Nickelodeon game show. Open with that. First sentence, we always say, like, there's a lot of thought about this, but we always say, hey, Mike, we've yet to be properly introduced, but I'm Sam McKenna and I'm the CEO of #SamSales. Lots of data out there where people are like, do not say your name and what you do. Nobody cares. And I'm like, you know what? I think if you go to the hassle of show me, you know me, and then you say, we have yet to be properly introduced, what someone will say is, you know something about me. We've yet to be properly introduced. Maybe we should I'm at least going to open up this email, right? That's the trigger. Two more things, and then I promise I'll stop talking on this. Your value proposition, specific and buyer persona specific. So tell me something that matters to me at my level in a specific, practical, tangible way. And then the other thing we think about is what is the hidden or forthcoming objection? And this is really, really important and super powerful because what we want to think about is what is that buyer going to think after they read the sentence? What's their next objection? What's their immediate thought? And how do we get around that? So for example, one of the things that I would say is, your team is all over LinkedIn, but they're not using it the right way. It looks like they're making an effort, but we can train you on how to do that correctly. Something like that, let's say.
Yep.
And my buyer's going to read that and be like, we already have a CSM at LinkedIn. We have a client success manager. I don't need you. So I need to think about that. And then I need to think of how to get around that, to which I would say LinkedIn hires us to train their teams on how to use LinkedIn. If it's good enough for them, I suspect it's good enough for you. You can say it a little bit more tactfully than that, but think that through. That's how we become better writers. We think through each part of that email. Okay, one more thing. Don't make it so long, right? 2 thumb swipes on a mobile phone, tops. Okay, I'll stop.
Very cool. Well, so one of the things that jumped out at me is, as you're talking about, if it's good enough for them, it's probably good enough for you, or if it will work for you, or it might work for you, or however you want to phrase that. That kind of language works for someone like me because I tend to be direct. I just want to get things moving along. So how do you think about things like behavioral assessments and things like DISC and Myers-Briggs and what's your color or whatever the other Enneagram, like all of these things that are out there? Do those things start to come into play when you're starting to think about the person on the other end? Or is that a bit of voodoo, or do you not really even think about that stuff?
Think about that stuff probably more from a leadership and hiring perspective. I think if we have to make our reps start to think about, what Myers-Briggs, score or letter combination is this person, we're really probably going to lose them. But I think there's an element of being professional while also being human in our emails. So you'll never catch us saying, "Hey, Mike," to me, unless I would say, "Hey, Mike," too. But for a prospect, I would still say hi. I feel like "hey" is a little bit too casual. But what we're also thinking about is even how to close the email, right? To make sure that we don't sound like a robot, to make sure we haven't copied and pasted something from somebody else. So in our emails, will never catch us dead saying, whatever that way of them saying that. But you'll never find us saying, "Mike, do you have 15 to 20 minutes for us to connect this week?" We just won't say that. Number one, it's never 15 to 20 minutes. Why are you asking for something and then booking something for 30? What the hell happened there? And then the second thing is that's just a robotic thing. So I would say, Mike, if you have some time over the next week or two, I'd love to find some time to chat. Let me know what works best on your side. And then I'll send a calendar invite along accordingly. Polished, kind, human, and you tell me when you're free, not me. A lot of people also think about, is it appropriate to put my Calendly link in there or my scheduling link? No. So when you're doing outbound outreach, cold outbound, even if it's warm, for you to say, "Hey, Mike, schedule time with me at your convenience," is so lazy to me. And you've got executive after executive after executive who says the same thing. You then have reps who are like, "But it's easier that way. Then they just, check my calendar or whatever." And I'm like, that's riveting. They still have to open up your calendar, look at theirs, cross-reference, and pick a time. I would rather you just tell me when you're free and I will figure it out myself. And then I will take the burden on of sending you a calendar invite. It's like the equivalent of being like, "Mike, I'd love to take you to drink sometime." And you're like, "That sounds great. Let's go." And I'm like, "Here's my calendar for you to schedule that date with me." No. We would never do that in dating. So why would we do that in sales? And if you guys are doing that in dating, call me and I will help you both with your sales game and your dating life.
I've been so far out of the game when it comes to dating and that kind of stuff that I don't even know anymore. And I still talk about sales process when we look at it from an internal perspective and forecasting.
Yeah.
In the context of dating or picking someone up at the bar. And then I joke that I've not done this in forever. So I don't even know if that happens anymore. Like now there are apps for it. But if I had a bingo card for all of the mistakes that I could potentially have made and even have made recently, I'd have bingo now at the end of, as we're wrapping this conversation up. I mean, one of the common ones that I've made is, because I'm a fan of Calendly, I have included my Calendly link in initial outreach to people. And I thought about it, God, like I'm not even giving enough space for there to be a logical next step that is incremental. I'm already going to, "Hey, here's my key."
Yes, that's exactly right. Room 509, see you there. Yeah, completely.
So just a head slap, because again, and it's the subject lines and it's the writing and it's the putting too much in there. And, so a challenge that I have personally as I go through this is I think, well, there's so much stuff that I know that I can do inside organizations that people are struggling with. And I just want to be like, even though I know not to do this, I just want to be like, let me go ahead and get this all out there so that you can go ahead and say, "Oh yeah, I'd like the sushi menu of I'm struggling with time, unclear on confidence, and I think we could be doing more stuff, but I don't know exactly what that is because we're not able to forecast. Let me get all 4. Can I?"
Oh my gosh. Well, and think about that. Like The purpose of this email, right? Like this outbound is to bait them with one tangible, practical thing that you can do to solve their problems. It's not to sell them, it's to bait them. And we talk about LinkedIn Sales Navigator all the time. For you guys who know it, right? How do we sell LinkedIn Sales Navigator? If you look at how most reps probably sell at LinkedIn, it's, hello, Mike, I can help your salespeople surface insights about their key buyers and job changes and whatever. And you're like, so instead, just say here, hey, I bet one of the things that you guys don't capitalize on is how quickly the people that you've signed deals with before change jobs, where they went, whose territory they're in, and will they buy you again? We've got a process that can help you identify that so you never miss a job change again, amongst 1,700 other things that the platform can do. Interested in a chat? Yes. I have tangible thing. I see myself in that. We have that problem. I don't want to miss that. I know how valuable those leads are. Sign me up. This sounds great in theory. I'd need to hear more to see if it's a fit for our organization. And if I can get someone to think that when they read our email, or to say, we have this need, we've been thinking about doing that, et cetera, then I've won. I don't need to tell you the 80 other things that we do. We'd never get anywhere.
So for those watching the video, this is something behind the scenes. You wouldn't usually see this, but I'm not going to edit it out of the video. And then I got to figure out how to best do this kind of stuff in the future. But Sam, awesome conversation around writing and engaging with people and showing people that you know them, and really simplifying the approach that we use here by not just dumping everything out there and creating a lot of complexity. Some people inside organizations are not the best writers.
What?
So yeah, shocking. So who should write? Who should put together, as some people they'll call it copy. And usually when I think of copy, it's because I'm copying somebody else's stuff and sticking it into my copy. But so who should write?
So this is something I do feel like very, very strongly about. And probably like cold calling, you won't get me to change my mind on it. I believe that 85% of the content that is sent out should be pre-written by somebody else. You should have sequences either by a sales leader or by someone who understands the true value proposition, the vernacular, the so what, the data behind the timing of the sequences, when they should go out, how they should be, put into nurture campaigns, followed up with all that jazz. Candidly, we do that at Sam Sales. It's one of our most successful lines of business. We get this inside and out. Here's the logic for why. So the 80 to 85%, first of all, that's written, that's great. The other 15 to 10% that's not written, that's where the salesperson's flavor, authenticity, insights, show me you know me, that's where that can come in. But the rest of it needs to be pre-populated if you really want to build a data-driven organization and be able to predict success for what's going to work for your teams. If I've got 100 reps who are all writing their own content and doing everything wild, wild west, I have absolutely no way of measuring at what point do we get conversions, what feature or case study or product or whatever got the most conversion, what gets us to from top to bottom of the funnel the fastest. I won't have any insights to that whatsoever, which is why that content needs to be pre-written. The other thing to think about is, as we know, most sales organizations have 5, 7, 10% of their sales team are top performers. They're A players. They're consistently at club. They're consistently crushing quota. So why not even look at what they're writing, what's converting for them, and using that for the rest of your 90% of your organization? If we know that 90% could probably use some help, why are we trusting 100% of them to write their content on their own?
I am firmly in your camp on this. I am firmly in your camp on this. And it is an opportunity. I don't quote Hillary Clinton often.
Wow.
Here I go on International Women's Day, quoting Hillary Clinton. This is how hard it is to get this to come out of my mouth. I was at a learning conference and she was speaking and she said, let's not reinvent the wheel. Let's use the wheel to go faster. So let's not reinvent the wheel here. Let's use the wheel to go faster. Let's use the content that works to accelerate things that are going on inside the organization. And I laugh when people are like, well, I like writing. I like doing this. We should let people do all, there's a lot of work that a lot of people loved doing that we've found technology to solve for, so that, wait for it, they could actually do more creative work and innovate and do some amazing things. So Sam, if anybody disagrees with you on this, you have me as additional firepower to jump on board and continue to push.
And to that point, I love to cook. I am god awful at it. So I outsource to my husband and I'll do the toppings. I can sprinkle the cilantro on top, right? That's what I'm good at. Give me the 10 to 15%. Even though I love to do it, I can admit I'm just not great.
Every good cook needs someone who can help with food prep.
I'm the sous chef. Yeah, you tell me what to do. Chop the vegetables.
Sam, this has been absolutely awesome. One, thanks for doing the video thing on the fly. Two, thanks for just an amazing conversation. Where can I'll add a third one in there after you're talking and I'll figure out what the third one is, but where can people find out more about what you're doing? How can they sign up for your workshop? It's awesome to hear about the momentum that's growing there. Where would you like people to connect with you?
Yeah, 3 things. Pop over on LinkedIn. You can find me there, of course. Give me a follow, say hello, say what you loved about the podcast. That'll be an instant connection request. Over on samsalesconsulting.com, pop over to sign up for our newsletters. It'll be a pop-up as soon as you get to the website, and make sure you never miss a single thing that's going on with us. And we do have pretty good content, if I do say so myself. And then third, if any of this resonated with you and you're like, I want to learn more, how do I up my sales game? Shorts.samsalesconsulting.com. We have things on LinkedIn, Sales Navigator, tons of sales content for pretty darn cheap for the rest of your life that you can learn directly from us. So it'll be a world-class education for a couple bucks, to say the least.
Awesome. We'll include links in the show notes. Sam, this has been an awesome conversation. If you found value in this conversation, let Sam and I know both on LinkedIn. Tag us there. Do the connection request Sam had directed. Sales is a thinking process. Life is a thinking process. Business is a thinking process. How are you thinking differently about yours?